All right, welcome to another edition of Comic Art Live. We've got a little different platform idea this week. Both Mike and Glenn are not with us this evening, and we've got a special guest this show. It's going to be Anthony Snyder. He is one of only two people to ever give me original comic artwork at no cost, and so he's been a friend for a long time. The other one, of course, would be Mike Berkey, but I like both of the artwork that I've gotten from them equally. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them both into the stream and we'll get talking. And our other host of the evening is Mr. Will Gabri-El.
Hey, hey.
Hey, Will. Hey, Bill. Thanks for having me. So I'm in guest mode tonight, right? Not host mode. I won't try to take over.
Yes, you are.
I don't have to run a crazy man like Mike Carbonaro.
No, we just have to run you.
Yeah, imagine that.
I'll be the crazy one this time, right?
There you go.
Yeah, just don't put any scarves on or funny hats, and you're all right.
Oh, my God.
And no more makeup. You're good. You're good.
I need to. I'm looking a little shiny here. Sharon, powder me.
All right. That's
Oh, boy.
You're in my light.
Oh, no.
So listen, we have a tradition with guests. We'd like you to tell us your origin story, but I'm going to prompt you with, I think one of your first art purchases was through the CBG.
I told Bill about this before we went on, yes.
And was it an, now correct me if I'm wrong, was it an Iron Man splash? I might be wrong about that part.
Well, I mean, I know I listened to one of the other broadcasts where you're talking about CBG, right? Mm-hmm. Getting the newspaper. And the first ad I ever ran with original art in the CBG, you were the first caller. You were the first person that called me about the stuff that I had put up. And I don't know, did you want something out of the ad or were you just looking for customers? Because I know that my fax machine blew up shortly afterwards. You were shooting me faxes of like Avengers covers. And I remember they were like $400 to $800. Like, that's too much.
That long ago?
Yes, it was that long ago.
Wow.
It was it was probably like 93, 94.
Okay, I would have said 95, but okay.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think the first year I went to San Diego was 95.
Okay.
I think. It might have been 94. Can't remember now.
Well, you know what? Go ahead and, because you have a better memory of this than I do, so go ahead and expand on your origins into the art world.
Well, into the art world, yeah. I hate to admit it, but I do tell people this, is that I met Mike Carbonaro in the early 90s, very early, like probably 90, 91, 92. And he was taking an acting class, and I knew that acting teacher, and he said, hey, I recontacted him when I moved back to the city, and he said, hey, I'm doing a film school at Tribeca, and I have this crazy classmate, and you'd be perfect for the thing he wants to do. And it was a James Bond sort of thing where I ended up killing my acting teacher in a subway, throwing firecrackers with cap guns, and that was Mike's story. And that was hilarious because, I mean, you just couldn't get away with something like that today. And the guy warned me, he's like, this guy's absolutely nuts. But he introduced me back into collecting comics and helping him at shows. And for all intents and purposes, Mike started me in the business because he handed me my first piece of art.
Which was?
Yeah, it was a Sal Buscema Hulk page. Yeah, I still have it. I was looking for it, but my wife cleaned it up someplace. Yeah.
No, that's your thing. I mean,
yeah. You hooked me up with something. Yeah, look. Ooh, Trimpy Hulk page.
Yeah. Drove it right to you. It'd been sitting in the collection of a former Marvel artist, and I was up in your neck of the woods. I think we discussed it, and I drove it over there, and yeah, quick deal. Had to get on the road.
Yeah, I love this because this is from that 20-cent era that I read as a kid, you know, from the spinny rack at the 7-Eleven. And like Hulk in the 160s and Captain America in the 160s and let's see what else.
Defenders?
And Spidey in the 130s, 140s, you know, and the Avengers Defenders crossover. Those are the things I'm most nostalgic about. And you know, those are the things I kind of kept when this became a real business, and I was willing to part with everything, you know, like the Spidey 59 cover.
We'll get to that later. But now, do people realize, although you were like a major dealer, do people realize you actually still collect? I mean,
well, didn't everybody start as collectors?
Absolutely, but I think there's a myth that you know dealers will sell anything, and that's just not true. I mean,
that's only true with me. It's only true with me, I think.
There's a price for everything.
Yeah, there's a price for everything. Will knows. What used to hang on behind my big screen TV? Oh, I miss it. Booby jiggle, we used to call it.
I thought that was up on the mantle of your fireplace when I was there.
No, it wasn't behind the fireplace because I have something that belonged to my father, and it was
that's where it was. It was sitting on top.
It was behind my.
Set it up there. Maybe you set it up there.
This is a mosaic of dogs playing roulette with poodles. And I've kept that ever since my my mom passed away, and she emptied the house in Durham. So you know, just to expand upon, in case anyone is wondering what we're talking about specifically, was that the and I'd like you to go into some details with it. Is that the largest deal you've ever done that we're discussing right now? On a single piece. I won't say a collection, but on a single piece. It's close, but not really.
Okay.
No, there was something. There's a couple other things that, I mean, if you equated it in today's dollars, yes.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Yeah, because the stuff you know, there was a twice up JLA cover in that deal.
So wait, just before you go into it. Just to recap, we're talking about the ASM, the Amazing Spider-Man 59 cover, the first Mary Jane on the cover in the Go-Go outfit and Spidey.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
the booby jiggle.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, everybody. But yeah, please. So what was involved again?
Oh, the what you gave me? There was the first that Wrecker Thor cover that was twice up but restored. There was that twice up JLA cover that it was a JSA crossover.
Mm-hmm.
There was a twice up DC horror cover. Was that in there?
No, I think the next biggest piece was a Perez JLA.
Perez cover JLA, yeah, I love
because of the gambling theme. Yeah,
yeah, that was a Royal Flush Gang cover.
That was painful. Man, that was painful.
That was painful to sell, you know, when basically.
That was painful. Yeah, no, that was
the reason why I say that I'll sell anything is because I did have a profession, you know, I was an advertising photographer in New York, and, you know, that ran its course and kind of ended, and I stopped making a living doing that, especially after 9/11. Advertising got really hard in the city, and you know, this business just kept getting bigger and better and bigger and better. And, you know, I opened myself up to doing more deals of different stuff, you know, like comics. You know, I have some comics that came in this week, like Walt Disney's Comics and Stories 1, you know, the first Duck book.
Now you've said that the comics business is generally more lucrative for you than the art business.
Superboy. Well, I don't know about lucrative. No, I wouldn't say that.
Well, consistent, is that a better word?
There's a lot of volume that keep my staff busy. It's volume stuff. If there's 100 packages that go out a day, there's probably 70, 80 that are involved with comics. So the volume is there in that respect. Because I do I'm up in North Jersey here. There's a lot of people that collected comics. There's a lot of people that had comics. I've been lucky enough to have access to family members of comic book artists and gotten like estate stuff, like
no, you're in a good
Nick
area.
Hardy's family or the Cougars, stuff like that. My hair is like an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time I walked in and got a haircut.
So
look, I'm groomed.
This is new for our show. We have makeup, touch up, and hair, and we don't have the budget for that.
Right. Well, we get it done before the show starts. That's the difference.
Oh yeah, you have hair down to your shoulders. I don't
have to do much. But,
so you can tell how many employees I have by how little hair I have left.
Well, you had a lot of employees the first time I came to your warehouse. I remember shortly after you opened, I came up to check it out and maybe do a deal, and I think you had like quite a few
you brought some comics up. You brought your comics.
Well, we were trying to do a really big deal, and it didn't quite. I mean, you said you're like, this is a great offer, but I just can't let this piece go, which I understand. There's a piece in your collection, so, but you ended up. You're going to buy the comics from me, and instead I got the idea that you trade me a Kirby page, and I thought I would actually do better, and it wouldn't be any money out of your pockets. So it worked out okay for both of us. But that,
do you remember what Kirby page it was?
Machine Man. It's a Machine Man page. Wasn't a huge pile of comics. It was just to fill in the cracks where I didn't quite have enough art with me. But
was that your Bronze Age collection? The stuff you bought as a kid? That stuff or
Nah. I sold that back in college, or most of it back in college. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I got to tell you.
Yeah, I sold my childhood collection when I was in college because I wanted to come up to New York City for the summer, and I sold it to finance that, so I could try to be an actor boy and go out on auditions.
I sold.
I remember I auditioned for the original Superboy. And Baywatch, that's true.
Hey, if Nicolas Cage can do it, why can't you?
I don't know.
Hey, but listen,
the only thing in life that ever made me nervous was auditioning for acting jobs.
Oh, come on.
I was always like nervous and like wanted something to happen so much that I had bad experiences. I just didn't audition well. I remember.
And now you visit that on other people when you interview them for a job, right?
Oh my God. I just, part of what I like to do as a professional collectibles dealer is being able to provide jobs for people. And my philosophy is that any job that's worth doing is worth doing well. And that's going to build character. And with that character, you can go out and do anything you want in life. That's what I try to impress upon my employees, and then I yell at them for taking too many cigarette breaks.
No, listen, when I first came up to your warehouse, which is a little overwhelming, and we can get into that in a second, but you had a lot of employees, a lot were after schoolers, high school kids. And
yeah, I had to get rid of all those, man.
Well, we talked about that. We talked about that day because they kept interrupting, not like every 20 minutes, but like every 3 to 5 minutes when we're trying to negotiate. And I think after like the 6th or 7th time, I said, Anthony, my God, I mean, I know you're trying to provide jobs, but some of these kids, I remember the worst one was two guys came in. They were probably, 16, 18 years old. And they had a book, and they came up to you. They said, now, when we list this on eBay, do we put it under journey or mystery? And I just was like, oh, man.
Or Thor.
Yeah. They were not familiar.
Yeah, those kids, I got a lot of those kids really, were not worth investing in. Let's put it that way.
Well, Not for what you needed to accomplish. When you're selling books that are maybe $10 and you just paid somebody $20 to list it, it's not a good look.
Yeah.
So, but you corrected that quickly. So
I don't know, not quickly enough. I lost a lot of merchandise to,
Going back to your warehouse, though, I remember coming there shortly after you opened, and I will say you had a room. I mean, when you come in, there's a couple display cases. There's like Migos and other things. There's comics. There's like
my Migos
stuff. There's like there's just a lot of pop culture. But you did have a separate room for artwork, and I think CBG books were in the same room, and they were nicely organized. And I remember you gave me a tour, and the shipping room was very well kept. You had a shipping manager, and he had his space, and he kind of kept.
He's
everybody
actually
out.
Still with me.
Okay,
still with me.
He was good.
Yeah.
He kept everybody out. He said, "Stay out of my space. Let me do my job."
Yeah,
and
he's very territorial.
It works. You had your office.
He wanted me to bring him boxes. I can quit junking up my space with boxes. It's like, you need to use them, don't you? I'm like,
well, you had your space, right? You had your office, and then Bobby had his office. But then you go in the back room, and that's where I felt like, and you left me alone a couple times, even though it was loaded with different employees, pulling stuff, looking for stuff, putting things back. But I felt like if I wandered around long enough, I might just find like the Ark of the Covenant or that very rare Spidey Halloween costume. I
have a Spidey Halloween costume.
I know, you just didn't know what you're going to find back there.
I have it.
Stuff.
Yeah. I love early Ben Cooper stuff.
Yeah. No, but I mean,
I do have an early one.
And each time I've come back to visit, I think I've been to your warehouse 3 or maybe 4 times. You've gotten consistently more organized. I give you credit for that, because that was I honestly I felt like I was on American Pickers. I felt like one of the pickers, and I came across a warehouse, and where do I begin? But no, you've gotten it more and more organized. So
a producer came to my warehouse to scout it for American Pickers, and I was like, yeah, man, let them come. I'll sell them everything, anything, whatever you want. Come on. And then he said, nah, it's too organized. It looked too professional. They wanted something that was...
He should have come when you first opened. It would have worked, believe me. But
right? It was piles. They wanted more like, what they do. Yeah. And then he came to my house and said, hey, let's try to develop something with you. But then I never heard from him. Stiffed. Stood up.
The story of your life, right, Anthony?
Yeah, well, we're still trying. I spoke to a producer today, actually.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, and then that thing I tried to let you see is really cool. That just got produced as a super fan content for a platform.
It looked pretty cool. It was definitely well done.
Yeah, it was like 3 minutes. If we can post it sometime, I'd love to.
Yeah, well, it shows off your warehouse pretty well.
So I'm sorry, Bill, just real quick, would the show be around your warehouse, or would it be like Comic-Con across America when you do that? What would you want to focus on, more or less?
A transactional show based in and around the warehouse would be best for me, but traveling as well, that would be part of it. Yeah.
You tried to get me to get on film with one of your productions while we were negotiating a deal, and I was like, no way. I said, if we can work out the deal right beforehand, I'll be happy to reenact it. But I'm not going to go through the machinations of negotiation with you. We're like 2 sumo wrestlers, going at it. Like, nah, I'm not going to do that on camera.
Well, it's surprising. Like when I've actually got into trying to produce a show, how hard it was to get people on camera.
Yeah.
And that was part of my profession beforehand, was a casting director for commercial productions. So everybody that I would interview, and sometimes it would be a few hundred people in a day, they really wanted the job, and so I remember one day I saw 1,000 people in one day down in Miami, and I was by myself. 1,000 people I saw in one day as a casting director. and it was for a cigarette job. And, you know, they all wanted to be on camera really bad. You know, they all wanted the job really bad, you know. And then when I started to try to produce a transactional show, and I would ask people, hey, want to do a deal on camera? And Jesus Christ, 99 out of 100 times I asked people, it was no. It was tough. It was tough. And Bill has experienced the same thing about doing like collector profiles. You know, a lot of people just don't want to be on.
That's true.
You know, they don't like the way they look on camera. They don't like the way they sound. They don't want to show people their stuff because then that's what everybody will want. Like that harpy splash. I mean, I don't, you know, do I show that or do I keep it a secret? Because now that's, you know, I'm going to get hit up for it and I don't want to sell it. But I'm supposed to want to sell it because I'm a professional dealer. I mean,
you put a big enough price on it as your personal collection, and maybe nobody will buy it and you get to keep it. I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And I would just reiterate that, you know, a lot of guys, you know, want us to have collectors on here. And I can tell you that when I did 6 interviews last year, and I literally emailed probably 50 different collectors, and I got 6 people. Well, I got like 7 maybe that agreed to do it. Most people just don't want to be on camera just for privacy reasons, or, you know, they don't want their coworkers to know that they're into the funny books and that sort of thing, and or know what they collect. And so it's not as easy. Or they need
the divorce to go through first.
Right. And so for me, it's like I don't even want to ask collectors directly. I'd rather have a collector come to me and say, hey, I'd like to be on the show, versus me having to send out all these emails and get turned down 9 out of 10 times. It's just no fun.
Well, you know what's interesting? When we had some comments last week about we need to switch.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah,
and little did people know we were planning on a little bit of switching up, and also we have, you know, a pretty long list from each of us of lineup of guests, and yeah, we encountered that, as you know, Bill. Last week we you know, proposed to a couple collectors, hey, would you like to come on? And one just said, no, I'm sorry, I just, you know, like you just described. And another one was like, yeah, sure, just as long as you don't ask me any like gotcha questions. So, you know, I'm like, well, you know, I'm not going to accuse you of murder. I mean, I don't know what a gotcha question is in the collecting field, but, you know,
right.
No, you know,
well, it's tough. It's tough. But so, hey, you know, where was there was a question on here, or it wasn't a question, it was a statement about.
Oh man, I just turned it on. I had it on private. Yeah, now I'm seeing comments.
But, you know,
yeah, I see my friend Nick Contreras just chimed in.
Yeah,
we'll get to Nick in a second. So
hey Nick, how are you? Last time I heard from you, it's like, I'm not selling anything.
Yeah, Nick doesn't sell
anything. To you.
But one of the things that we had talked about before we went online was with the show was the, you know, the lack of San Diego. Obviously, preview night would be tomorrow. I mean, you know, Anthony, you would be setting up right now. I would probably be kicking back and having a drink over at the Hyatt or something like that at this point. But
yeah, you know, we'd be having dinner right now and having had to sweat our way through the Tuesday. They don't turn on the air conditioner day. Yeah, man, I've been depressed. I actually thought it was last week and was totally depressed. And now then I realized, oh no, it's this week. So I have to go through it all over again.
So you're not doing the con at home thing, because you were an exhibitor, so you should have been able to go ahead and post some art or comics for sale.
No, we did that. We did that, yeah.
All right. Well,
but then they said that there would be no direct. They wanted it to be a browser experience for the you know, the guests or the, I don't know. It was something weird that I don't know how much guest interaction there'll be, but I mean, I missed a big trip. I mean, that's my big trip. That like cures me from traveling.
For you, more than many. It's a big trip.
That's more than anybody will do.
Talk about that a little bit. The Comic-Con across America.
Yeah, I mean, we start off 2 weeks before San Diego, where I'll send the truck with 3 guys to Phoenix, and then we'll do a pop-up show in Phoenix at my friend's store there. And man, it's depressing. It's depressing.
You have family in Phoenix, right? You have family.
Yeah, my sister's in Phoenix, and if you know man, it's just, it really gets me emotional. I mean, I really miss it. I mean, it really hits me hard not being able to do that trip because, the pop-up stores in Phoenix and Las Vegas, and then over to LA for John Delmayan's show, the Sunday before. I was doing my own pop-up store in LA the Sunday before San Diego for several years. But then, somebody thought to do, Chuck Costas and John got together to put a show on. So I joined, forces with them. And,
that didn't get canceled until like a week ago, right?
Yeah, he held out. He was trying.
He held out.
I mean, we talked several times and I was like, John, are you sure this is going to happen? And
now
he's like, yeah, man, I'm going to come hell or high water. But, he
was poker facing it pretty hard. I was actually going to do that show. That was the plan this year, was to set up at that show, Torpedo, and then just attend San Diego preview night.
Oh, yeah? You were going to be out there? When was the last time you were out there?
Yeah. So I only make it every few years, and this was the year.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time you were there.
2012.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, 8 years ago or so.
Good year, though. It's a good year. I had a good
time. So then, after LA, and doing all that business on the way in, a lot of times, I'd be like, okay, this is get this show, man, it really hits me hard just talking about it because it's been such a big part of my life for so long. I've been going out there since 95, I think.
So that's almost a month-long trip for you? Is it a month? Or
yeah, I'm out all of July.
Okay.
And then that makes my wife appreciate me more when I get back. So, for at least a couple weeks.
Your wife was just doing your hair and makeup. She appreciates the hell out of you, Sharon does.
Yeah, does she? Yay.
Hey, now.
She might sneak in.
Well, we can introduce.
No.
Yeah. No, she's not going to show up.
No,
all right.
So, and then doing. I'm shiny.
Let's get the butt chin contour. The butt chin.
Well, while this is going on, we actually have another guest this evening, and I saw that he popped into the studio. So I'm going to bring in artist Scott Hanna.
Yay, Scott.
Hey, Scott.
There he is.
Hello, everybody.
How are you doing tonight?
How are you?
Very good.
So enough about me. Now something about Scott Hanna. Yay.
Hey, Scott, actually, I was looking on CAF because, obviously you've been a comic artist, inker for many years. And I thought, there's got to be a lot of art on Comic Art Fans by you. And I was pleasantly surprised that I was right. You have at least acknowledged there's over 2,056 pieces, and you are right behind Joe Sinnott, honestly, with 2,084 pieces. And you actually rank as the fourth highest quantity collected of where you're the assigned inker on artwork on CAF. So that's pretty incredible, I thought.
Well, supposedly, especially now that Joe is no longer with us, I believe I'm supposed to have inked the most comic book pages of anybody currently alive. And Joe, I think in some of the rankings I said he was under me, except back in the early days, they didn't count or give credit to a lot of the creators. So most likely Joe surpassed me because I think my count of pages is something like 22 or 23,000 pages I've done so far.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's weird.
Well, yeah, and that's and we have about 8% of those pages on CAF, so that's
a substantial amount. Yeah,
we need to get the other 90% on there. That would be pretty good. So Scott, how has life been treating you with the whole COVID situation and everything? Were you kind of on pause for a while?
It's actually been really weird because normally I'm still working for Marvel and DC and other publishers doing 3 or 4 books a month sometimes. And when the COVID thing hit, especially when the distributors got shut down, like everything shut down. My editors at Marvel were temporarily put on furlough. My book was canceled. Now some of the things are starting to come back. So I'm working on a really cool project right now for Marvel called Werewolf by Night. It's a miniseries. Totally, we're taking it in a totally different direction than the original Werewolf by Night. But we had started this before the shutdowns happened, and they literally canceled it. They said, "Okay, we're not. It's not on the schedule anymore. You got to stop all your work." And then finally, about a month ago, they put us back on the schedule. It's actually scheduled to come out in October now. Makes sense for a werewolf story. But I'm really happy that we're getting back to a real world. Up until then. And also, I totally miss like not getting to see the fans at cons, because normally, springtime, summertime is the busiest time where I'm out there. I'm on the East Coast, so there are so many fantastic East Coast shows that I usually do, and I've got fans that see me at every show, and it's like family, and that's an incredible thing to miss, because we poor artists work at home all by our lonesome, and this is our social outlet,
Yeah.
And we're not getting to do that now. So it's really sad, and it also hurts your wallet a lot, which is tough that way. Actually, what I started doing for the first time ever is I opened up sketch lists for commission lists for at home, because the cons aren't there. So I can't see the fans. So this way, hopefully the fans can come to me a little bit.
And did you just do that all through your own site, or
yeah, pretty much. I've been doing that through Instagram, which is hashtag Ingrid Scott, or Facebook, which is Scott Hanna on Facebook. And it's amazing how, the fan, literally, when a convention got canceled, like I was supposed to do Phoenix for the first time ever this year, and when they delayed it, they rescheduled it for the fall and then canceled it again. But I had several people say, "Oh, I was looking forward to seeing you at Phoenix. Can I get a sketch from you anyway?" I'm like, "Sure, of course, yeah." So that way we still connect a little bit. And then hopefully when next year happens, I'll be able to go to Phoenix for the first time next year.
Very good. Very good. I mean, I've talked with a lot of artists, during the pandemic, and people are, you're finding your way to connect with the fans and find ways to sell your work when you're not able to get out in front of people. I think that, it's been definitely a creative marketing time for people to try to find ways to continue to earn a living without the shows.
Yeah, unfortunately for me too, I also teach, and that got shut down too. So I've been doing things like the Joker painting you see in the back. I started that as a Facebook live stream, just as a free demonstration of painting. So that's a way to reach people and stuff. Luckily, we have social media, so we can do this.
No, that's fantastic. That's I'm going to be curious to see how things go in the future with shows, with cons and everything, and how the attendance ends up working out. And I think that everybody's going to have to keep getting a little bit more creative in how they market themselves. And I just think that the next year it's still going to be evolving how we come up with ways to promote our businesses and our brands and still be able to put food on the table.
Yeah, my wife is actually, she's a clothing designer and fashion teacher, and she started making face masks. And because I work in comics, she started making superhero themed face masks, and which is a perfect fit. Masks and superheroes go together. Even we've got supervillains and stuff. But
where can I order one, Scott?
Actually, her website is on Etsy. She's got a site called Patak Couture on Etsy, and she's got all kinds of. She actually made this shirt for me, so some of the fabrics are made out of this shirt or the same fabric as this. But I'm planning on when we start getting conventions back, I expect we're going to be wearing a lot of masks. So this will be a new product I'll actually have at my table, and then I could maybe even the way she does the mask, she has one plain side and one superhero side. So I was thinking, oh, I could do sketches on the inside. I could do, you never know what we can do to have to adapt. I just got, so this is actually one of the face masks, and you can see it matches my shirt. So it's got a George Tuska Iron Man right here. It's got I think a Kirby Captain America. So
I got to order one of those or a couple.
Yeah, Scott, make sure you send me the link to your wife's Etsy, and I'll make sure we put it in the comments and everything on here.
I will do that.
Yeah.
All right. And there was actually this one comment I saw from Brian Peck where he said there's probably more Hanna Inc. pages, on CAF, and it's honestly true, because a lot of times people who post their artwork on CAF only list the penciler and don't list the inker, and that's unfortunate, but it definitely happens more often than I'd like to say.
I remember my buddy Tim Townsend years ago. He made a couple posts about that, saying you should always list the inker. It's taken away from the effort put into the work, and
that is what you're looking at when you look at the art when it's inked. That's what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons I started out as a penciler, and I became an inker because I had somebody else ink me badly. And like, I want to have the last say of what actually gets printed. What we see on the page is the ink line work. So that's what you really say. And weirdly enough, we, especially in the old days, we would erase the pencil underneath. So all that was left, for those comic art collectors, I always found it kind of humorous that there's like, oh yeah, that's a signed John Romita Jr. or a signed, so, and I was like, I inked over their pencil signature. So I inked their name as well as inking my name. So I was kind of it's not forging their name, but I was drawing over their signature for the final product.
Now that's going to be a point of contention going forward with collectors. Is this actual signature? Is this, what's going on here?
Well, again, I've done this a lot of times, so I think it's been happening for a long time as well.
Longer than they realize.
Exactly. Yes. This is kind of
it is funny. That's been like a question in the back of my mind for so many years when you would see a cover and it was, inked. The signatures were both in there. JR and Hanna. Did they both really sign it, or was it Scott? Now I know for sure.
Well, again, technically we both really signed it. I just also drew over his signature. So, but actually for JR, it's really easy because he just uses his initials. Like I actually just got a commission to ink over a Walt Simonson pencil, and I got to work with Walt on the Avengers several years ago. And he's got his distinctive dinosaur signature. And I'm like, I really don't want to try to ink his signature because it's like, I don't think I can get that dinosaur swoop the way he has it. That's so.
Make a stegosaurus into a brontosaurus.
Yeah, it's a brontosaurus, exactly. Yeah.
Well, you go back far enough, and on Twice Up covers and 60 stuff, and the signatures were stats. I'd have stats of like Stan Lee and stats of like Stan Goldberg and. Like a Millie cover and stuff like that. A lot of times they wouldn't even be real signatures. They'd be stats in the art.
Well, nowadays, because I do a lot of what we call blue line work now, I will actually try to just darken the pencil signature to a black and keep it without actually touching it on the blue line or something like that. But it depends on the situation.
There's a question from Anchor, our friend Anchor, who's local to me, actually. I see him quite often. And he's asking who your favorite modern artist is to ink.
I've worked with so many phenomenal artists.
Here comes a politically correct answer.
I was going to say.
Well, I have several favorites. David Finch, I just worked on a couple of years ago on Wonder Woman. he pencils great for inkers. I mean, he thinks in terms of blacks and textures, and he also pushes me to go further with it. So David is like, okay, I'm giving you some textures, run with it and add even more. And as an artist, I love that when I get to collaborate with another person and they push me to do more. I love working with John Romita Jr., same reason, because he gives me like this fantastic starting place and then allows me to interpret it in my own method. So those are two of the guys that I really love working with. But
can you see this? Did you ink this? It's a Finch double page spread with.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's a fantastic page. That's not one of mine, no.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, pretty much I only got to work with David so far on Wonder Woman and a few Batman covers. That's about it. Actually, I think this was the first time I ever inked over David, and this was a sample that got me the job working on Wonder Woman, was inking this sample piece.
Nice.
That was your audition piece? You still had to audition?
Yeah, literally, I've done so much stuff you would think it would be really strange for me to have to audition. But one of my specialties is I'm super adaptable. So I change my style depending on who I work with. And David hadn't seen me ink David. You know, he hadn't seen me ink Finch style because I hadn't worked with him. And if somebody's seeing me ink like Mark Bagley or John Romita Jr. or Tom Rainey, they won't necessarily think of me doing a Finch style. So he had to see, working over his own work, that we actually fit together really nicely, and I totally understood his style and jumped right into it because I've admired Finch for a long time. But
see, Scott, you took my question just now. You answered it already. I was going to ask, do you think your style has changed on your own from, say, the 90s, to now, or do you think you've more adapted to who you've worked with? But you just kind of answered that. So.
Well, I think the answer to that is actually both, because my skill set is I'm a very adaptable artist. I can do everything from super cartoony to super realistic. I can do paintings. I pencil on my own. But also, as an artist, you change and adapt, and the goal of all artists is to get better as we continue. Like there's no point. Hopefully when I'm 90 years old, I'm going to still say, how can I get better at this? So as I get better as an artist, even teaching helps me get better as an artist. So yeah, I'm doing things now that I wouldn't have thought to do 20 years ago. The techniques are different. The printing press and digital means if you're producing comic books for the internet, on a big screen, you can see a lot more detail. So that means we have to, as artists, put more detail into the work with the expectation they might be blowing it up. So all those things are factors that hopefully I'm a much better artist now than I was 20 years ago.
Okay. Well, see,
that's probably true of all great inkers, that they were, at least capable pencilers in the first place, which brings us back to the guy I wanted to talk about tonight. It was Mr. Sinnott, and how your thoughts about him and his, Hall of Fame career and what impact he had on you as an artist.
Well, first of all, like you mentioned, a lot of people think of Joe as an inker over people like Kirby, but he actually did quite a lot of penciling work, and it was quite sophisticated. He would do large crowd scenes, do lots of people. I actually was very flattered that because of the Inkwell Awards, they had a Joe Sinnott challenge every year for several years, and I got to ink over some of his pencils. And it was just a blast to partner with a legendary artist like Joe Sinnott. And going back to his influence, I was fortunate enough when I was quite young to be reading Joe when he was still working in the industry, or seeing his work. And when I started seeing Sinnott's work, at that time I had no idea. As a kid, you don't know what an inker is or what a penciler is. You just see artwork. Mm-hmm. But I would look at something like the Fantastic Four, I'm like, wait, why does this look so totally different than Thor looks? And they're both supposedly the same artist. And then you realize that, oh no, it's an art team, and one part of that team can have a really big influence on the finished product. And I think Joe is probably one of the first times I was able to clearly recognize that the inker had a major impact on improving the quality and making a better finished product. And so much so that, Joe created kind of the house style for all of Marvel for a long period of time. It didn't mean everybody copied him exactly, but his look was the sought after look. A lot of people think of Joe only also with Jack Kirby, but if you look at his work over somebody like John Buscema, and John Buscema had some of the best inkers of all time in the history of comics got to work with John Buscema. And everybody made John look a little bit different. And Joe gave it this finesse and this, the shine. Like, I love the work they did together on Silver Surfer. It just, the cosmic quality of space. Yeah. So much of that was actually Sinnott's influence, because if anybody here has ever seen John Buscema's pencils, he penciled very loosely and let the inker run with it and take it from there. So yeah, Joe actually was an amazing influence, because he's the guy that got me to see that, wow, there's this other stage to the process. There's the end stage of somebody's finessing it, somebody's finishing the artwork and making it more complete.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, because it is what you're looking at in the final product, and like something like this romance splash. I mean, it's like but it's so fun to look at, even because it's that great combination of John Buscema and Joe Sinnott. And when you're talking about like when Joe was inking like Buckler over on the Fantastic Four during, when I was reading FF, like right there in the 140s and stuff like that, and then you had Coletta inking John Buscema on Thor, some of those issues, and it's just like, it's just, then if Joe worked on them again, it'd be like, hey, why is this so different? Why is this so,
exactly,
why do I love this? And why do I want to collect it later on, when I'm an adult, and I was a visual artist as a photographer, and then this is what I'm attracted to in an artwork sense. And, he was the guy that, just had the love of it. And, I did an interview with him that Bill posted, and, the story that struck me the hardest was that, because he was such a capable and talented penciler, he was, he did FF5, and then he was hired away from Marvel to do the Pope, yeah, and then what else? The Mother Teresa, and those other books. What was that imprint called? What? The Pope and Mother Teresa and stuff like that. I forgot.
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember the name of the publisher.
But he told me that the reason why he went away was, it's like if he was making, I don't know, sometimes it depends on how far back you go. Sometimes they were only making $5 a page, $10 a page. Let's say that he was making $10 a page to ink it. That company hired him away and was going to give him pencils and inks. So he was going to be making $20 a page to do the Pope. And then fandom, loses Joe Sinnott over Jack Kirby, and we have to endure, these less capable inkers, Russos, Bell, and Coletta, that just destroyed Kirby and erased Kirby. And, when you look at the artwork, the pencils, I've seen pencils, that from that era, and it was all there. And you didn't see it until Joe worked over, and then that became the greatest artwork ever, in the history of comic books at that time,
Anthony, as you mentioned, back then they also did a lot of what we now call oversized pages. So
it was all large art. Yeah,
the artwork was even more extreme, people had this like bad idea that, oh, it was the early days, so everything was simple and easy. It's like, no way. They put so much work and effort into this stuff. And especially if you're an original art collector, you get to see how much work and how much skill is put onto these, medium-sized panels, small panels. The splash pages and covers are just astonishing in the amount of detail and work put into them.
And that was lost for like from 5 to when did he come back? 44?
Yep.
FF 44?
Yeah.
Something like that?
That's right.
Will, you're better at this than me, right?
That's right. 44.
Yeah. And we lost all those issues, that were just, not going to say trash, but no, come on. Jack's art is lost.
They're there.
In those issues. It's just not there. Come on.
But as an inker, I'm an artist on my own, doing my own work a lot. So I always try to treat every artist I work with as much respect of their skill and their storytelling and their style as I wish somebody else would give me if they were working with me. So that's my secret, is I try to use my skill but highlight their skill. I never want to bury them. If they're going to put in effort on a page, I want to put in at least as much effort as the penciler does. Usually, my philosophy is I can always add, but I can never subtract. You never take away from what's given to you, but you can add to it if you want to. And usually my pencilers are very happy with that.
Scott, I think you need to teach a inking philosophy class to pass along to budding artists to sort of adapt that outlook. I think that's an excellent outlook.
Yeah, because I started out as a penciler with a bad inker, I realized, like, okay, how did I want to be treated? And
golden rule. It's the golden rule.
Well, it is. That's exactly what it is. But I've worked with so many phenomenal pencilers, and they appreciate my efforts on their behalf. Like I literally don't have the philosophy of I don't want to be the star, except when I'm doing my own stuff. When I'm doing the Joker painting, I want to be the star. But when I'm working as a partner with somebody else, I want them to look good. And by making them look good, I'm making myself look good at the same time.
True. Very true.
Yeah, there was Brian Peck asked a question earlier.
Yeah, treasure chest.
Oh, the treasure chest one. Well, I was going to say that I thought this was a good question because blue line stuff is always an issue for collectors. So, Scott, what percentage of your current work is inked over blue line versus pencils today?
Of my current work, it is almost entirely blue line. There are a couple of the old school artists, like when I work with David Finch or Mark Bagley or John Romita Jr., I usually still get actual pencil boards. Walt Simonson, some of the time when I was working with him, was pencil. But the way the industry works now with the deadlines and the international aspect of so many artists, like I work with artists from all over the planet. And this originally started because they started stretching out and having artists from like Brazil. And I couldn't wait a month for the artwork to get from Brazil to me in order for me to ink it. Whereas if I got a scan of the pencils, I could ink it the next day. So that was one of the main changes of why it started happening. And so now the basic, again, there are some artists that still prefer it. I'm working right now with Guy Dorian Jr. on a really cool graphic novel, and he loves me to work over the real pencils. So I'm like, cool. As long as he's happy with it, I always prefer the real pencils because I get much more sensitivity of the original creator's work. I find it if I'm working over blue lines, it's actually a higher percentage me that ends up on the page. If I'm working over the actual pencils, I can see the pressure of the hand on how hard the line is, how much definition is there. I can see a lot more subtleties when I'm working on the original. So whenever humanly possible, I prefer to work over the original. But unfortunately, the industry has changed drastically. So the vast majority of my current work is blue lines from scans.
Yeah. That's a similar situation to what I went through as a photographer in the advertising industry in the early 2000s, where I was a craftsman with film, and film was like a living, breathing, elements that you captured in the camera and you delivered it in a transparency. And this is your layout. You produced a layout. And then it went to a digital aesthetic in the early 2000s, and it became, we'll fix that in post. Well, we'll change that. Well, and it became like this, I don't know. It became something else, and it lost me. It lost its heart for me. It became a post-production aesthetic instead of what you produced in the camera. And that still, for me, a pencils and ink pages has the heart, where that ink only, it just sits on the surface. It's like something different.
I've had some unusual circumstances where there are a lot of pencilers out there now that work entirely digitally. So I would get digital pencils, ink it, and that way the only original that existed was my ink line, because the penciler didn't have original pencils. And I was working on 2 issues of X-Men, and after the issue was done, the penciler called me up and said, "Oh, Scott, how are we going to split the artwork?" And I said, "Oh, it's real easy. You get to keep all of your pencils. I get to keep all my inks." He said, "I don't have any pencils." It was like, well, that was your choice. I don't have to give up my artwork because you decided to use that medium. And then he was like, "Oh, can I buy some pages off of you?"
Wow, that's a cool story. Yeah.
But it's weird that and that's why even I know a lot of artists who are using digital art for their initial drawing. The way that we're most currently still doing traditional art is in the ink stage, because that finished black and white page looks so nice. For an art collector, having that ink on a page, even if it's over blue lines, is still original hand-drawn art. So even if your pencil, like I know Adam Kubert frequently does, his layouts in the computer, does them digitally, and then he'll add to it in ink it traditionally if he does ink his own work. And I know a lot of artists who actually do it that way, so they still have that traditional stage is more commonly the ink part now.
Mm. Yeah,
I think some artists, digital pencilers, have managed to negotiate slightly different deals with their inkers, but it sounds like you're pretty shrewd at making sure you keep your work.
Yes, sometimes you can make an arrangement with somebody if it works to everybody's benefit, but it has to be negotiated up front. So you don't do it afterwards and say, "Hey, I want half of your stuff."
Not a strong hand negotiating afterwards. That's
exactly. And literally, one of the things I love about comics, the way I've done them, is comics is a very collaborative medium that you work together with other artists, whether it be writer, penciler, inker, colorist. And I always like, whenever possible, to have open lines of communication so we can communicate with each other and talk about this stuff. Because if everybody's happy, you're in a much better situation than if one person's just sitting in the side disgruntled because nobody talked to them.
okay.
Right. I know there's a lot of people don't want to collect the artwork that's inked over blue lines, but I think more and more we're seeing that's the norm. And there's some dealers who rep both the penciler and the inker. I think like Marquet reps Charlie Adlard and Stefano Gaudiano. So when he sells the art, they're getting both the original pencils and the inked blue lines.
I actually know a lot of people that are trying to get both sides. If there is traditional pencils, they want to get the starting, and again, the inking part is the part that's actually published. So the published work is actually the inked work over the blue line, and so that way the collector can have both halves of the equation. And again, but I think as we go into the future, the vast majority of pencilers now don't pencil. They do digital art. So I suspect, or at least what I'm seeing, is that the more original, the more traditional art will actually be the inked art, not the, and it doesn't matter whether you're inking your own work or not, but what you end up seeing in the finished traditional sense of collecting art will be more and more the ink process, not the pencils.
Like you said, it displays better for sure.
Oh,
Somebody's
absolutely.
gonna bring it
Yeah. Up on the wall, it looks so great, you know.
I think for some of us though, it's still, I don't know if we'll ever get, I'm sure Anthony feels the same way. I don't know if we'll ever get used to it. If you grew up with traditional pencils on the board with inks, collecting from a collecting standpoint, it's
well,
tough.
That's another reason why a lot more people are asking for private home commissions, because that's done the traditional way.
Yeah.
Commissions are done. When I do a drawing, I do the pencils and inks. Actually, yeah, this is a commission I just wrapped up that I penciled it and inked it. And actually, I even did a rough pencil sketch on another sheet of paper. And the collector is like, oh, can I collect the pencil rough as well as the pencils and inks that are on the actual page? So I think that's because
then he's going to ask you for your pencil next. He wants your pencil.
Well,
that's taking it to an extreme, but
I think for those people who really appreciate the joy of having the original work, commissions are becoming the future, because that way you get the actual this sounds trite, but I really think like the soul of the artist gets on the page when you're touching it the whole way, when you're using those traditional tools, and that way that personality, that part of that human is put onto the page. When it's digital, it's just a printout. You lose that aspect of it.
Yeah, that was my point earlier about film versus digital. Yeah, that has no, the soul is more in the film, the emulsion, the layers. I mean, you as an inker, how do you, with a digital printout, there's one thing about lines, but gradations and stuff like that. Is it the same thing? I mean, do you read it the same way as an inker?
In my personal feeling is that you lose a little bit of the sensitivity of the art.
Right. Yeah.
And now, fortunately, because I know how to draw very well, I can make up for that loss of I can interpret it. But what happens is, again, it starts being my interpretation. So when I'm working digitally, I really think it's more in the traditional sense of inking in comics. We used to have what was called breakdowns and finishes, or finish pencils and inking. And one of my specialties has always been what's called finishing, where I finish the pencils in the ink stage. And frequently I'll even take a pencil and add shadows or textures or details. And when I work in blue lines, it actually feels more like me doing finishes, because I'm getting a little bit less data from the pencil artist. And so I have to interpret it more with my own skill set, my own interpretation. So it becomes, instead of, say, we used to always split up the art with type pencils and inks. It would be 2/3 of the art would go to the penciler, 1/3 would go to the inker. In finishes, it was actually 50-50. So it was half and half. And I think working over scans is more like that 50-50. It's more of my kind of personality or skill set on that end page, which, again, if you know how to draw, that's great. If you don't know how to draw as an inker, that's a minus. You're going to lose something. You were talking about Vinnie Coletta, who used to erase stuff, and it's not quite that bad. There's still a lot of information that shows up on the page, but to me, it's not quite as much as when I can work over that soul of the penciler.
Yeah. I agree. Well said, Scott. Well said.
It is. I think, wow. Yeah, Brian has another question here, Bill, if you want to highlight. So Brian asks, Scott, have you ever split up a book with a penciler when pencils and inks are on separate pages? Split with getting the pencil and inked page per page.
Actually, once or twice I've actually done situations like I worked with Adam Kubert, and Adam was doing mostly blue lines with a little bit of hand penciling on the page, and then I would ink over the page. And so we came up with a split where, oh, how about if we basically split the pages, so he would get some of the finished ink artwork and keep the pencils for that page, and I would get his pencil roughs for the ink pages that I kept. So I got some of his pencils and he got some of my inks, and it worked out well. So again, this is one of the deals we can make if we're equitable. And so it's like, okay, well, if you're penciling and I'm inking on different things, if we split it, even 50, again, it's more often a 50-50 where, okay, you give me half of the pencils, and that way, again, for art collectors, each side has the pencil and inks of each individual page. So that way, like, I might keep half the book, but I get the pencil roughs from, or the, whatever level the pencils are from the penciler. They would get my inks and have the pencils as well for my ink pages. So both sides of us would have the complete set, which for collectors is much nicer. That way you don't have to go looking for two different people, two different agents, whatever. You just say, hey, I want the whole set, and you got it.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So, I mean, let's revisit Joe Sinnott a little bit. I would love to talk about the impact he had on your career and your sensibility a little more, and the brushworks and stuff like that. I mean, somebody mentioned Dick Ayers, and I love Dick Ayers, but I love Dick Ayers pre-hero stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like his
monster stuff. Yeah. That stuff, that era of Dick Ayers ink over Kirby, I love that stuff. But I don't know, like in the hero era, it kind of fell flat for me. What's your opinion there?
Well, again, Joe was such an amazing impact because he kind of defined for me what superheroes were supposed to look like. It was this bold style, this very finesse style. I mean, I swear, I don't know how he could ink over Kirby and nothing was ever out of line. Like all the templates were, all the ovals and circles were just perfect. And, that's hard to do with traditional inking, to get all that stuff right. And
over Jack's raw pencils. He did straighten them out a little bit. Joe was really proud about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he smoothed them out for sure.
So the skill to do that is quite extreme, but still he had that mastery with the traditional brush, where it was smooth and soft and silky when it needed to be. And I'm from the old school of ink, or what we call the old school of inking. Now it's more called the East Coast school as opposed to the West Coast school, where I learned how to use the brush. I use both traditional quill pens and brushes, but the brush takes this really specific level of mastery because it's a super sensitive instrument that's flexible. So it takes a long time to get good with the tool of a brush. And Joe was a master. He could, and you could tell he would just do a stroke and it would be a perfect stroke. I know some artists will go over lines multiple times to clean them up. And I can tell just by looking at Joe's work, he was like, every line was perfect. And it was so perfect that it was what everyone else emulated. It was what everybody else looked to try to do. But it's not easy. There aren't too many Joe Sinnotts out there, and even like I got to ink over Jack Kirby, and the style I was trying to emulate was way more Joe and Jack than it was even Dick Ayers and Jack. There's so many people that worked with Jack, but the one that inspired me was the Joe Sinnott version. To me, is the classic version of Jack Kirby. It always will be.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's why I wanted to have you on with us tonight, to pay homage to the great Joe Sinnott, who was always such a gentleman when I interacted with him, and he was always such a sweetheart, and always made people feel, special that when he met them. And I just wanted to give him a bon voyage.
Yeah, and to me, as you said, his personality, the way he dealt with fans, the way he dealt with people, other professionals, beginners, all that stuff, that's the type of thing I always wanted to emulate. So I want to be that nice to other people. I want to be that nice to beginning artists and other professionals and just the fans in general, that, you really don't have. There are a handful of other people that I consider equally good role models, but there aren't that many. And to me, it's not just the art, the fact that his person fit as well as his skill. He was such a nice person as a human, and he was a super amazing artist at the same time.
Yeah.
Rare combination.
Down to earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just made my wife cry, because she was with me when I interviewed him for that the interview we posted, and she was with him like for an hour, and she's over there crying right now, because he was such a sweetheart, and he was so present and grounded and appreciative of the positive attention he got for his work, and he was a true gentleman.
Well, and also as a professional, he was still working, all through his 80s. I mean, how recently did he quit the Spider-Man strip? I think only a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
So he was working his entire life.
Can you see this? Yeah. Can you see that? That pencil work? I mean, that's only a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that to me as an artist, actually, I know a lot of artists who think this way, but our dream is basically to die at the drafting table, to still be drawing until we kick the bucket. That's literally our dream, I want to keep going until I drop. And Joe was a very good example of that he was still working and doing art until the end. And that's, again, another reason to emulate that.
It's like the stuff of legends. Dying at the drawing table.
See, this he drew last year.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah.
He was doing it on postcards, and the last time I saw him at a show was just over a year ago, I guess. He was up here in White Plains, I think, and he was selling these. My light's bad. But I mean, the Scarlet Witch is a perfect example. If you can see it, back there, it is.
There you go.
I mean, that's a 90-year-old guy drawing like that.
Exactly. Yep.
He was 91. The only other person that I can say that about, Ramona Freighton shows up with art like that every time she does a show that we've seen her, and she's 90 years old, and she's got a table full of art and little commissions like that, and they're just drawn like she did stuff in the 60s. It's and that was 60 years ago. It's amazing.
My mother is in her mid 80s now, and she's still an artist. She's a fine artist who does portraits and landscapes. She's still as good as ever, if not still getting better. So I'm like, okay, if she can still be working into her 80s, I want to be working into my 80s.
That's awesome.
Well, art is, it's not my job, it's who I am. It's what it really is who I am. If I can't draw, put me away.
Right?
It's your passion that also pays the bills.
Well, I love teaching art too. So
where do you teach? Where do you teach, Scott?
I've taught at several different places, but my wife and I actually started the artsandfashioninstitute.com, and we actually teach small classes. Usually my classes are only 3 to 6 people. I teach everything from sequential art, cartooning, fine art, drawing and painting, And now because of COVID, I had to shut down all that stuff, but I still do actually like Facebook Live or Zoom classes with students because I'm not allowed to have them in my studio anymore.
Right.
But I've actually always been kind of a closet teacher, but I love sharing information and passing on all the skills that you learn over time. And I love encouraging new artists. So many of my students have gone on to, really good art schools. They've gone on to become professionals in the comics industry, in animation, in film. And I love seeing that, like inking to me is one of those things that's almost a lost art form, that it's so traditional and it's so difficult to master the tools of the quill pen and the brush that now we have digital inking, which works really nicely. But those traditional tools, it helps to be taught what to do, not just say, oh, I'm going to watch some YouTube videos and try it on my own. I actually like to teach people how to be better at it because I've practiced for a very long time. So I don't want it to be a disappearing art. I don't want everybody 20 years from now to say, it's like, oh yeah, I just ink digitally and that's what it's like. It's like, no, this is actually based on hand touching the tool that touches the paper, and you can still do it that way.
What's the age group that you teach, Scott? Generally,
usually I don't teach anything younger than 13 because I want them to have a certain amount of focus. But the vast majority of my students are late high school getting ready for art school, or I actually have a lot of students who are in art college or adults who have even gone through college and still want further education. Or even one of my favorite students was, she actually wanted to learn painting and drawing, but she was retired. She had a whole full career. She retired. She always liked art, never had any training. Then she studied with me for about 3 years, and now she exhibits her work in art festivals all over the place. She does beautiful paintings, and she sells her artwork. So she turned her hobby with training from me into her new profession.
Nice.
That's awesome. My kid, my middle kid, Jamie, got accepted into a couple art schools. He got accepted into Joe Kubert School and School of Visual Arts in New York.
Yeah.
And we're waiting to see how he accepted the admission to the SVA, and we're waiting to see how that's going to turn out with,
Yes, both of those schools are very good. I actually know people who teach at both of those schools. So yeah, I can highly recommend them.
He's not going to
Klaus is at SVA too, right?
What was that?
Klaus Jansen's at SVA, I think, and
for a long time. I hope he's still there, but I'm not sure. Yeah, Klaus is one of those another legendary artist who has also been a teacher for a very long time.
Okay.
I have read that.
Anthony, you're not going to put Jamie to work at the store anymore?
No, he's an artist. He wants to do his own thing. So I gotta, and as a dad, I gotta,
Oh, absolutely.
That's my job, to let him go pursue his passion.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, sir.
Oh, I gotta thank you. Oh my God. I gotta thanks, Dad.
As an artist, one of the reasons I love being a teacher is because I want my students to be able to have that joy that I have to make a living doing art. The fact that I actually get paid to do something I absolutely love to do, and it literally is my passion. It's what my favorite thing to do. Sorry, Pam.
I knew it when I married you.
Is doing artwork. And my wife, I actually met my wife in art school, so we're both artists and we understand that. But we love encouraging new artists to follow their passion and to live their dream. And it's a wonderful thing if you can make that happen. It really is.
Yay.
I went to art
my
school.
passion. You went to art school?
I did. I actually got accepted to the School of Visual Arts in New York, but New York scared the hell out of me, and it would have been 1986 or 87 when I toured the school, and when they told me I had to spend my first year living at the YMCA, I declined. And
the reason I did not go to SVA, because that was one of 2 schools I applied for and got accepted to, but they didn't have dorms.
That's why I didn't go. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I ended up going to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, which was also a very dangerous neighborhood at the time, but they had dorm rooms. So I'm like, yeah, I want to live in a decent space.
Yeah.
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 No, that was, I went to school in Boston and Montserrat College of Art because I just couldn't take New York City at that
I did
time.
the animation at SVA.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, he's got a dorm room right now, and we're waiting to figure out how that's going to work.
Oh yeah.
We're nervous about that.
Anybody with children in college, we're all waiting to see how that's going to work out.
Oh, sheesh.
Right?
It'll be
yeah,
interesting.
that's
It's a
where I'm
crazy
at.
world right now.
It is.
All right. Well, hey, we've been at this for about an hour and 20 minutes. So unless we have any other questions, I really appreciate the fact that you guys took time out tonight to talk with us.
Absolutely.
Scott, it was kind of last minute, but it was great. This was really fun talking about your career and definitely the way the hobby for at least us collectors, what we have to look forward to or not look forward to, in the coming years, as far as like having to, deal with more blue lines and inks versus originals, unfortunately.
Well, even again, for the purists of us, I love getting commissions where I still get, like right now, I've got a couple of John Romita Jr. oversized pieces that are coming my way that he penciled traditionally. I'm inking it traditionally, and it's like double size. So it's so fun to do it that way for the collectors, and the collectors get this one-of-a-kind piece. And actually, I think some of the ones we did that way might actually get published by Marvel. So it is nice whenever we can still work the traditional way.
Right. Well, that's one of the great things with commissions are, I think in the back of every collector's mind is they hope that commission that they're getting turns into a cover, or at least becomes published somehow, right? Because that $2,000 piece all of a sudden becomes a $4,000 or $5,000 piece. So, just be for the luck of that piece being published.
And it gets well known.
That actually has happened to me. A piece that I did with Mark Bagley must have been almost like 10 years ago is now being published as a cover. So it's like, who would have figured that would happen? But it can happen,
Yeah, absolutely.
Bill, show Scott the Joe Sinnott piece that you got for me.
Oh yeah.
I bet you'd love a copy of this to ink over.
Oh, well, yes, that would be a blast.
Wow.
That's really
That
nice.
is super classic. That is great.
It's vintage.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I pulled that out of my personal for my friend Bill here. So
wow.
Joe's
Yeah,
also
limited.
A favor. That's what he's saying. You owe him a favor.
I do know that. I'm going to be paying that back probably for the next year or two.
year.
But yeah, we'll see.
I'll take a year.
Hey Scott, for last minute, it was a real treat speaking with you and hearing about technique and stories and some of your background.
Well, thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
You guys had good interactions and feedback and stuff. So yeah, if you'd like me to come back at some point in the future, just give me a call.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And same for you, Anthony. Same for you, Anthony. We have to have you back to finish out some stories we didn't get to.
Oh yeah.
Some
Yeah, I
point.
feel like I didn't get enough time tonight.
Do you ever feel like you get enough time?
Well, my other thing, yeah, that's a problem too. So, no,
All right.
It's been great, guys. I've been looking forward to it all afternoon.
Yeah, it was a blast. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good night, and we'll actually be back next week with. Well, I'll let you know in a few days. We have another guest scheduled, and Berkey and Glenn will be back, and we'll be talking to James Pasco. He's done art restoration, and he's been an artist as well. So we'll be doing a little bit of talk about correcting artwork or putting stats on things, and it should be interesting as well. So again, thanks, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for making this possible.
Yay! Awesome.